everyone, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, welcome. My name is Ella and I try to make weekly or at least bi-weekly videos all about Wicca, witchcraft and magic. So for today's video I actually asked a poll on my Patreon. So I now have a Patreon and I basically asked if or more so what video the people would like to see, and the answer was a little bit about my personal practice. And yeah, so I thought maybe let's go sit down, have a chit-chatty type of video. Therefore I have my mug here with tea. I prefer loose tea, and right now I'm drinking a berry herbal mix. I think it has kiwi in it and like raspberries and wild berries, so yeah. Oh, also happy Mabon. So I am filming this on Mabon today, therefore I'm also eating a apple crumble that I made yesterday, and I've got like these fake sunflowers around the house. I've decorated, I'm wearing orange, so let's get right into it. I'll start off with a little bit of a basic background, just in case you haven't seen any of my previous videos. I am a Wiccan, I'm an eclectic Wiccan, and I have practiced Wicca since I am around 10 or 11 years old. So I'm at this point around 11 or 12 years a Wiccan. I don't have a set date, that's why it's always like vague, but yeah, I'm turning 23 this year, so if I started like at like 10 or more so 11 years old, you know, you can do the math. And I grew up in a very witchy sort of or slash spiritual kind of household. So my grandma and my mom have kind of always been practicing like tarot and different forms of spirituality, and they're just really into all of that, let's say. And so is most of my extended family as well. So I'm really lucky in that regard. And the most of my practice I have started and learned from books. So in particular Silver Ravenwolf, maybe you know some of her books. She has, you know, led a lot of people into the craft of Wicca, and so she has me too. So she has me too. Wow, English is on point today. Anyway, I guess you get the point. But yeah, I've learned a lot from Silver Ravenwolf when I was younger, and then of course with time I've just read more and more books and online things. But my practice has really been very defined by me being very solitary, because around 12 years ago or so it was not what it is today, with it being such an open community. Therefore, yeah, as I said, most of the things I've learned were from books, from my personal experience, as well as with mixed in themes of course my family. So I never had that entire like community as we do now. Therefore, yeah, really solitary sort of practice, and very confined, let's say. Because of that, I didn't have a lot of outside influence or outside input, and therefore not a lot of perspective, let's just call it like that, I guess. And through my time as a Wiccan, I have of course now learned a lot just from teaching myself, and I have made a couple of friends throughout the years that were interested in what I practice and what I believe in. A couple of people have also set up their own altars or incorporated some of the themes, at least. Always a little bit more like just curiosity, I would say, than properly being like, oh yeah, let me become a Wiccan. Like, you know, obviously that's quite a big step, especially if you already belong to a religion. But yeah, so I've always been kind of surrounded by my own beliefs, more so from internally rather than outside influences, especially because when I was younger we moved a lot because of the military. So I oftentimes would hide my practice a lot. I would wear my pentacle under my clothing, or if I did have a t-shirt like this, for example, and people asked me about it, I'd be very vague about it. I'd be like, oh yeah, like I'm a pagan, I like nature, and you know, I wouldn't really go into it that much because I knew the receptivity of it was not always like super open, let's say. Which is fine, you know, I mean, like, you can't blame people if they don't understand it and stuff, and some people are just not interested, and that's fine, that's fair enough as well. Like, you know, I do me, you do you. And there were some people that were definitely more interested, and as I said, those were usually the people that I then did kind of like take in a little bit, and you know, I showed them a little bit of what I do. And a lot of people did really like it. But yeah, I think one or two even are actual, you know, I think one or two people actually do practice witchcraft at this point now. But yeah, most people were just curious about it, let's just say it that way. And now obviously that has really changed in the last few years with Instagram, with YouTube. You know, I did, when I was like 15, I believe it was like 15 or 16, I started watching Azura Dragonfeather and also Harmony Nice, also here on YouTube. And you know, I really kind of always was watching those videos to get that community, because as I said, you know, I didn't have it around me, and or not in person as much, especially because my parents or my family, they weren't Wiccan, so it was still a little different. And yeah, I was like searching forums and blogs and everything, but it's not been like it is now, where you have such a community, or now even, you know, a Patreon. Like, that's insane to me. So there's that entire community that exists now that obviously has influenced my practice a lot. So I would say my practice has changed a lot in the last 3 or 4 years. 4 years actually. I also moved to Latvia, and Latvia is one of the last pagan countries, or the last countries in the world that converted to Christianity. And it's an interesting topic, let's say. Deserves its own video for sure, but Latvians have a lot of paganism within their culture. So if you ever do have the opportunity to go to Latvia, definitely take it. And they have that entire paganism with symbols everywhere. Like, they have these runes and they're everywhere. They celebrate Midsummer, which is called Jani or Ligua in Latvian, and they celebrate that. And they have, you know, the entire like flower crowns, or the men have, I believe it's oak tree, because the oak tree is the Latvian national tree. So they have the crowns, and they have the outfits, the Latvian traditional dress. They really celebrate these old pagan festivals a lot. They still have a lot of pagan gods that they commonly just, you know, have around. So that has really influenced my practice a lot as well, in a way. And it also brought me back to my personal roots more, because you may or may not know, I was born in New Zealand, but my mother is German. However, my mom's side of the family is quite Polish or Slavic, and my father's side of the family is English/Scottish. So I'm kind of really within my practice in that kind of bubble, let's say. I don't really go out too much of my ancestral roots. I like to practice within those. It just feels more comfortable and like home to me. I definitely love and really like reading and learning about obviously different cultures. I mean, I've studied anthropology, so I have my bachelor's. Just got it this year actually. So that has actually that has in itself contributed quite a lot to my practice as well. But back on topic, I do love experiencing and learning about different cultures, especially Greek, Egyptian. Those are really, really amazing to me, and there obviously are Polynesian themes because of New Zealand. But to be fair, I stay more within my ancestral, like Celtic, you know, European and Slavic kind of folklore and magic, mysticism, paganism. And yeah, so that's just kind of where I'm coming from. And now with social media, my practice has changed quite a lot, because over the last 2 years, I think so, I've started this YouTube channel, and I've started being very open about it on my Instagram. So you may have seen my Instagram, you may have seen this YouTube channel before, and me being so open about it is really different from me. I'm still a little bit introverted sometimes, and always really amazed when people are like, oh, what's your like practice though? So this video actually is like me trying to be more like telling you guys about myself as well, because, you know, maybe that's interesting to some of you. I do want to build this community, so I think, you know, it's only fair if I also share something about my personal practice. And yeah, and I have started moving more into folk magic and traditional witchcraft with time, and I've noticed that I am not as traditional of a Wiccan as I was a few years ago, naturally, because obviously I didn't really have much outside experience because I was so solitary. But now with the availability of books, online resources, and just like personal connections, I have kind of noticed in myself a little bit of a shift. And something that I've actually realized or come to realize is how important, for example, cooking is to me. And I've always loved baking, for example, so kitchen witchcraft is something that I am really incorporating a lot more of in my personal practice now. And you know, there's different themes that I now incorporate because of my living situation, for example. So we just recently moved to Germany, back to Germany actually, only for a little while. But we have a huge forest nearby, so every day we walk the dogs and we always go into the forest. And so just feeling that nature connection and the connection to the spirits around you in the forest and in nature in general has been incredible and added a lot of value to my practice. I've also started working more with my ancestors because I suppose now that I'm back in a country where I have that ancestral connection, I've just been called more to that again. And I guess with, you know, with life, obviously you go through these different stages and your practice will move with that, you know. So I'm at a really interesting point right now where I'm kind of rediscovering my path a lot, and it's quite beautiful actually, like if I may say so myself, in that, you know, I'm learning about my interests more so now because I'm more perceptive to these different changes of going from, you know, living in Latvia and being a student to not being a student anymore, living in Germany, being engaged. And you know, it's that entire shift to a different part of my life, and my practice has evolved with that. And yeah, so I now do still consider myself definitely a Wiccan. I owe so much of my life happiness to my beliefs, and it has really helped me in my life. And so therefore I do think I will, you know, always carry that within myself. I do also go by the Wiccan Read most of the times, and I do definitely still work with, I work mostly with the goddess or the triple goddess. That's what I have tattooed here as well. I don't know if you can see that. But yeah, and I have the Wiccan Read, like part of it tattooed under my boob, on my ribs, I guess you can call it. And I got that tattoo when I was 17 actually. So Wicca is obviously a big part of my life and it's influencing every aspect of it. However, I am not necessarily as traditional anymore. So for example, I include different themes now, more folk magic and traditional witchcraft that before I did not so much do. Like my rituals have really shifted from being more ceremonial, which is more typical for Wicca, to more intuitive and more, you know, whatever feels right at the moment. However, for example, my tools are still Wiccan, the traditional kind of Wiccan, you know, a thame, boleyn, or boleyn, I don't know how you pronounce it, to be honest. You know, like the chalice and the setup of the altar is still pretty, you know, Wiccan. However, obviously I incorporated new themes, and I think that's okay. I think you shifting through your life and taking witchcraft with you is actually perfect, because obviously your magic will shift with you. If, you know, if you're doing magic on a regular basis, if you are practicing witchcraft for years and it's just incorporated into your life, obviously it's going to shift with you. And I think that's a great thing. So yeah, let me just have a sip of tea. And then something that I have been always doing is, and I've actually only recently talked to my friend Carla about this, is I've been talking to the goddess in my mind. I don't know how else to describe it. Hopefully it doesn't sound like completely silly, but you know that voice we all have in our head when we think? I direct these thoughts constantly and always to the goddess. So for me, I talk to her just throughout the day, you know, like in the morning when I make any kind of decisions, throughout the day, if I see something nice or anything. Like my thoughts are almost always directed as a conversation with the goddess. And you know, at the end of the day I like to summarize what I experienced in the day, and I like to give thanks and my gratitude to the goddess as well. And so I kind of incorporate a lot of my witchcraft quite internally. Like, a lot of my witchcraft is very internalized as well, not just, you know, outside experience, but also that inside experience. And I think that's quite true for a lot of people. I think a lot of us not necessarily open up so much about it, because saying, oh yeah, I talk to in my head, I think, you know, obviously that's something that, first of all, it's personal, and second of all, it's difficult to open up about. And that's fine. I think it's completely personal to you, and you don't ever have to open up about it if you don't want to. But seeing as we're in a video about my personal practice, I kind of felt I would open up about it a bit more and tell you about it, because what is interesting for me is witchcraft is obviously a multitude of things. It's intention, it's a practice, of course, as well, but it's also, to me, your actual belief and your persona and how you act throughout your day, through your week, and in your life in general, based on your own ethical guidelines and your ideas and your belief systems and yada yada, you know, your goals, whatnot. And if they align with, for example, a specific path, for me being witchcraft, obviously my actions are going to be influenced by that. You know, obviously if a Christian lives according to their belief system, they will act according to that. Or, you know, in Buddha or Islam, any belief system really, you're always going to find people that act according to their own belief system. And they incorporate these things into their daily life, into their daily practice, and almost to a point where it is completely normalized and they don't even notice it themselves. Like, I, for example, don't necessarily notice things myself anymore because I've been doing this for so long, within my lifetime, obviously, or this lifetime, that, you know, for me it's normal. For me it's very, very common to do these little things throughout my day that I don't even have to think about it anymore. But obviously, if you're new, for example, to it, then these are things that are a great thing to actually incorporate into your practice, because you kind of get used to it and you start including things into your daily life, and in a few years' time they will be normalized. They will be just your daily routine, and witchcraft is going to be completely into included in your like daily life. I think you get the idea. But yeah, and I think it's fascinating to see how, going back to social media, that has kind of played out, because obviously now that I am so open about it on Instagram, on YouTube, on Patreon, I have now kind of come to a point where I not only do witchcraft for myself, but I also take pictures of it and showcase it more, if that makes sense. So obviously that has had an effect, and I honestly think it has had a quite positive effect, because to a certain extent, I think, I don't know how to explain this properly, but I almost feel like now that I am more on social media, I might be doing things that I previously would maybe be too lazy to do. So, for example, decorating my altar, I might do that already a lot of time in advance before a Sabbath, because I do need to take, you know, certain pictures and stuff like that, whereas previously I would maybe put it off a little bit more, if that makes sense, and I would probably only do it on the day off or the day before, and I feel like that has kind of helped me grow even more in witchcraft and in my practice. So yeah, and then obviously also the perspectives of different people, you know, you see different things, you see conversations, even if you're not part of them, you see comments on Instagram, on YouTube, and I always feel like they should be taken into consideration. If you are attentive, you can really learn a lot from these, just from different people's viewpoints, and not necessarily for your personal path, but just to understand what are other people's perspectives, what are other people's beliefs, how do they come to those beliefs, you know, and how might you be able to incorporate things into your own personal path. And yeah, so I guess that's definitely something. Obviously with social media, like, that's a huge topic as well in itself. I have discussed it a little bit here and there, and on, you know, YouTube videos, on my podcast, and you know. So it's quite interesting, I think, a lot of different influences, and I think that's true for basically everyone. You're always going to be influenced by your environment, and whatever environment you put yourself in is obviously going to change something about you, something about your viewpoints and your ideas, blah blah blah. So yeah. So I think one more thing that might be quite interesting, I think I have tea, yeah, everywhere in my face. So I think something that might be quite interesting is actually daily practices in my personal path. So I have talked about this again before, but some of the things that I daily always do is obviously what I said before, that I communicate with the goddess. So I have a connection with her at this point, and I like that connection to be very active and stable. So things that you can do to upkeep a connection with, for example, your deity, are like flowers or offerings or food or drink on your altar. And I definitely do that with my decorations on my altar. And, you know, every once in a while having, like, for example, apple crumble, a little piece of that on your altar. That's something that I've been doing, but a little bit more sporadically, to be very honest with you. I think my connection with my goddess is more internalized, because it also kind of depended on where you are. So if you obviously are traveling a lot of times, you can't always have like an altar, and this altar is pretty new. It's also not my like actual altar. I have this beautiful old secretary, but it's currently downstairs in the winter garden because it does not fit through the doors. This is a really old house. The doors are quite small. But we're moving to New Zealand soon, so I'm sure I'll figure everything out there. But yeah, and then obviously intention is really, really important for me in my practice. So if I make myself a coffee, I pour my coffee with intention, and I stir it clockwise for, you know, protection, and so on and so forth. You can bring numerology into it. So if you have your own lucky number, for example, or a number that is associated with a certain intention that you want to, or goal that you want to acquire, or, you know, 7 times, 13 times, those are like general numbers, let's say, within witchcraft. That's an idea that I, you know, have incorporated into my practice a lot of times. And yeah, and then just little things, honestly, like the dog walking and just feeling nature and experiencing witchcraft in your daily life. I think I've said this before in previous videos, I think we expect with witchcraft that you have to do these elaborate rituals every full moon and every new moon and every single Sabbath, and you better be, you know, acting accordingly and maybe dressing accordingly to your witchcraft. And, you know, if you're not talking about witchcraft 24/7, are you even a witch? Like, these are things that I think are cliches, or that are stereotypes that are absolutely not true. And I think a lot of our practice is internal, and therefore a lot of times, especially nowadays, you would never be able to tell who actually is a witch. You know, you've probably walked around in a city or in a town, and you've probably passed 1 or 2 witches without even knowing, because our magic is very internalized for a lot of us, you know, and it is very personal, it is very, yeah, just private often, you know. So I think a lot of times we sometimes feel, especially now, that we have to do these elaborate things, especially for Instagram, but don't feel pressured to do that at all. Like, if you want to have, you know, not an altar at all, and maybe only have a few flowers and maybe 1 crystal, if you even want any crystals, then that's up to you. That's your personal path. I've always worn my pentacle. I'm currently in the lookout for a gold one because I only wear gold jewelry, but they're expensive, like really expensive. So I'm kind of saving up for that at the moment. But yeah, and there are these little things that are personal to you, you know, like wearing different colors to honor deities or celebrations, the seasons. These are things that are completely personal to you, and everyone's gonna do their path differently, and that's important. Me as a Wiccan, for example, a pet peeve of mine is seeing... I have two pet peeves, and they are on the same topic. My first pet peeve is when people assume that any witch is a Wiccan, and therefore witches never do any baneful magic, which is not true. And the second pet peeve then, actually it's three. The second pet peeve is obviously to say for some witches to say to the other witches, no, you're not supposed to do that because, you know, it's the harm none rule or the threefold law, yada yada. And not everyone is a Wiccan, and not everyone, you know, works with that. And then the third one, and that I have actually talked to my friend Carla about, because I think we want to make a like chit chat video together, like a live video or something on Instagram sometime, is the hate that Wiccans receive because everyone is seen as being, or not everyone, but a lot of times people think Wiccans always are these, oh, you're not supposed to do that, that's against the Wiccan Rede. Which also is not true, because, you know, like, I am a Wiccan, and I don't care if you practice baneful magic, like, that's your practice, that's your thing. I protect myself, so I'm good. But, you know, you do you, and that's fine, and that's fair. We don't also have to always believe in the same thing. But, you know, the same goes the other way around. If I am a Wiccan and I like my Wiccan Rede, then that's fine too. So that's just a little side note right there, right here. But yeah, so I guess that actually might already be it. It's definitely a chit-chatty video, and I think, or I hope, that, you know, you stuck around and that you like this kind of video. Definitely let me know. It's still new for me to open up so much about my personal things, let's say. I always feel like, what do I even tell you guys? Like, what do I even say? But, you know, so if you do have any kind of questions or topics that you would like to see more of, then definitely leave them in the comments below. And obviously I'm going to have to, like, announce my Patreon properly. So I have a Patreon now, woohoo. I'm pretty excited about it, actually. Like, that was quite a big step for me. And yeah, I'll obviously leave the link to that below if you are interested. There also is a Discord channel, Discord group, Discord server, I don't know how you call it. I'm new to this, okay? So that will also be in the description box. There is a public one for just everyone. And then obviously there is a Patreon only Discord, and yeah, and then obviously all my other links will also be in the description box, such as my witchy shop and my Instagram. I also just released these really cute pins. I will show you a picture right here. If you're curious about these, they also will be in the link below. And yeah, I think that's actually already it for today. And if you see me in the next video and I'm wearing the same t-shirt, it's because I'm doing a filming day today. So yeah, just to let you know. Anyway, so thank you so much for sticking around. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe. It does actually make quite a big difference. I know every YouTuber always says it, but it really does. You would be surprised. And it's just motivating, it's just nice. So thank you so much, and see you in the next video. Bless be!